Welcome to Property Report UK, your trusted source for clear, independent analysis of the British housing market and the wider forces shaping our economy. If you want the headlines explained properly, with context, evidence and a calm assessment of what it all means for homeowners, renters and investors, you are in exactly the right place. Tonight, we're looking at a story that isn't yet dominating the front pages but perhaps should be. Because beneath the surface of everyday life, beneath the normal rhythm of work, school runs and rising household bills, the UK economy is showing clear signs of strain. Growth has stalled, business failures are climbing, unemployment is edging upwards, and in some parts of the country, the pressure is no longer theoretical. It is immediate, visible and deeply structural. The truth about recessions is that they do not land evenly. They rarely begin with a dramatic nationwide collapse. Instead, they show up first in places that were already fragile. Towns with limited economic diversity, cities dependent on one major employer, areas where council finances are stretched to breaking point. These places become early warning signals for the rest of the country. Over the past several weeks, we've examined official data from the Office for National Statistics, council budget reports, insolvency figures and independent research from organizations such as the Recession Foundation and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. What emerges is a picture of 10 urban areas that are particularly exposed if the economic slowdown deepens. These are not isolated cases of mismanagement. They are case studies in long-term structural imbalance. Let's begin on the Lancashire coast, in Blackpool. According to the latest English indices of deprivation, Blackpool ranks as the most deprived local authority area in England. That is not a marginal distinction. It is a clear statistical reality. Entire neighbourhoods sit among the poorest in the country. A significant proportion of working-age residents rely on some form of state support. High street vacancy rates remain stubbornly high, and thousands of properties stand empty. Blackpool's challenges did not appear overnight. When traditional seaside tourism declined in the late 20th century, the town struggled to replace that lost economic engine. While other regions diversified into services, technology or advanced manufacturing, Blackpool remained heavily dependent on seasonal and low-wage sectors. The result is a housing market defined by low values and limited upward pressure. For property owners, that means minimal equity buffers. In a downturn, prices do not need to fall far to create negative equity risks. Further northeast, Middlesbrough presents another stark example. Nearly half of its neighbourhoods fall within the most deprived 10% nationally. Child poverty rates remain deeply concerning, and the local authority has faced severe financial pressure in balancing its books. When councils require exceptional measures simply to maintain day-to-day operations, that signals a structural gap between local needs and available funding. This matters profoundly for property markets. Councils under financial stress cut discretionary spending first. Libraries close. Youth services shrink. Public realm maintenance suffers. Over time, these reductions influence how attractive an area feels to residents and investors alike. Housing demand is never just about bricks and mortar. It is about confidence, infrastructure and perceived future stability. In West Yorkshire, Bradford illustrates a slightly different dynamic. Bradford is culturally vibrant and demographically young. Yet despite that energy, it faces high retail vacancy rates and elevated child poverty levels. Council leaders have openly acknowledged structural budget gaps running into tens of millions annually. Even substantial council tax increases have not fully closed the deficit. For homeowners and landlords, these figures are more than abstract accounting. Persistent fiscal strain limits regeneration capacity. Without sustained investment in transport, education and town centre renewal, property appreciation struggles to gain momentum. Bradford's proximity to Leeds highlights another uncomfortable truth in regional economics: being near prosperity does not guarantee sharing in it. The same tension can be seen in Sunderland. Here, the economic narrative revolves heavily around the automotive sector. The presence of Nissan's manufacturing plant has long anchored employment across the region. Direct jobs and supply chain roles together represent a significant portion of local economic activity. When global manufacturers announce restructuring or job reductions, the ripple effects extend well beyond factory gates. The North East already records some of the highest rates of economic inactivity in England. Public sector employment forms a larger share of the regional workforce compared with many southern areas. That creates a dual vulnerability. Private sector contraction and public spending restraint can arrive simultaneously. In property terms, that combination constrains buyer demand and suppresses rental growth. In East Yorkshire, Kingston upon Hull faces unemployment levels notably above the national average. A high proportion of economically inactive residents cite long-term illness as the primary reason for not working. That detail is often overlooked in national debate, yet it carries serious implications. Where health-related inactivity is widespread, rapid labor market recovery becomes more difficult. Housing affordability in Hull is often described as an advantage, with average prices far below the UK mean. However, low prices can equally reflect limited inward migration and subdued wage growth. In weaker markets, modest national downturns can translate into sharper local price adjustments. Moving to Lancashire again, Burnley recently experienced a significant employment shock following the closure of a major distribution facility. In towns where total employment bases are relatively small, the loss of even 1,000 jobs represents a substantial percentage of the workforce. Median earnings already sit below the national average, and property values reflect that reality. Inexpensive housing may attract yield-focused investors, but it also signals constrained local demand. The industrial heritage of Stoke-on-Trent tells a story repeated across many former manufacturing centres. Once globally renowned for ceramics production, the city has faced successive factory closures amid rising energy costs and international competition. When traditional industries decline without clear replacements, employment becomes fragmented and often lower paid. Stoke also records some of the highest levels of fuel poverty nationally. That intersects directly with housing, as energy-inefficient stock becomes more expensive to run at precisely the moment household incomes are under pressure. Nearby coastal Hartlepool has long contended with limited economic diversification. Significant reductions in public sector employment over the past decade have weighed heavily on the local labor market. With relatively low house prices and modest private investment, the area remains sensitive to shifts in national confidence. Slow, incremental decline can be less visible than sudden factory closures, but its cumulative impact on property demand is equally significant. In Lincolnshire, Grimsby faces potential knock-on effects from challenges within the steel industry at nearby Scunthorpe. When Parliament is recalled to debate emergency industrial legislation, it underlines how closely certain regional economies remain tied to single heavy industries. Food processing and logistics provide employment in Grimsby, yet these sectors typically operate on tight margins. During recessions, consumer spending reductions quickly translate into lower throughput and job insecurity. Finally, in Greater Manchester's orbit, Oldham demonstrates how proximity to economic success does not guarantee participation. While Manchester city centre continues to attract investment, development and skilled employment, surrounding towns can lag behind. Child poverty rates in parts of Oldham remain among the highest in England. Business survival rates across the northwest have been comparatively weak. For property markets, that creates a stark contrast between booming urban cores and peripheral areas struggling to capture spillover growth. Taken together, these 10 locations reveal a pattern rather than a coincidence. They are places where long-term underperformance predates any formal recession announcement. They entered the current slowdown with limited fiscal headroom, constrained private investment and housing markets that lack resilience against price shocks. The broader national context reinforces the concern. Business insolvencies are running at elevated levels compared with historical averages. Economic growth remains subdued. Inflationary pressures, although easing from their peak, have left a lasting imprint on household finances. When mortgage rates rise sharply after years of ultra-low borrowing costs, affordability calculations change quickly, particularly in lower-income regions. It is important to stress that none of these cities are defined solely by statistics. They are home to families, entrepreneurs and communities working hard under difficult conditions. Yet property markets operate on confidence as much as fundamentals. When employment uncertainty rises and council services shrink, buyers become cautious. Transactions slow. Price growth flattens. In more exposed areas, values can retreat. For investors and homeowners watching from elsewhere in the UK, these case studies serve as early indicators. Regional inequality remains one of the defining features of the British economy. If underperforming cities were able to close even part of their productivity gap with stronger regions, the national economy would expand significantly. That potential remains unrealized. So where does this leave us? The UK is not in uniform crisis. Prime central London is not Hartlepool. Manchester city centre is not Burnley. But the health of the overall housing market depends on more than a handful of high-performing postcodes. It depends on broad-based growth, sustainable employment and financially stable local authorities. As we move further into 2026, the critical question is whether targeted investment, infrastructure spending and coherent regional policy can narrow these divides or whether another downturn will widen them further. Property markets do not exist in isolation. They mirror the strength or weakness of the communities around them. This is precisely why we analyze the data carefully here at Property Report UK. Because understanding risk early allows you to plan intelligently, whether you are buying your first home, managing a portfolio or simply trying to make sense of the headlines. If you found this report valuable, make sure to subscribe to Property Report UK. We bring you clear, independent analysis of house prices, mortgage trends, regional performance and the economic forces shaping Britain's property future. Like the video if you appreciate evidence-based reporting, and share it with anyone who wants a deeper understanding of where the UK housing market may be heading. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay analytical, and we will see you in the next Property Report UK update.